74 years carrying this family on my shoulders. 74 years of sweat in the fields, aching bones, and endless mornings before the sun had even thought about rising. And this is how they repay me. My name is Lawrence Jones, and I have lived on this Texas farm since the day I was born. My father built the old clapboard house with his own hands. My mother planted the pecan trees that still throw their shade across the yard. I buried both of them in the family plot behind the barn, and for decades I believed my son, Gabriel, would one day do the same for me. I was wrong. That morning, Gabriel came into the kitchen with a smile that did not reach his eyes. His wife, Amber Susan Rodriguez, stood behind him in a new green silk dress that looked better suited for a Dallas cocktail party than a dusty farm road. And next to her was her father, Patrick Rodriguez, a man whose silver hair and expensive watch screamed of deals made in back rooms and favors exchanged over bourbon. "Dad," Gabriel said, his smile as thin as the rim of the coffee cup in his hand, "someone has to stay here and water the garden. You know how fragile the tomatoes are this time of year. You'll manage, won't you?" It was not a question. It was a dismissal. Amber Susan did not even look at me. She was busy checking her reflection in the microwave door. Patrick gave a small grunt, his eyes on the screen of his phone. "It's only for a week, Lawrence, you understand." His tone was smooth, polite, but his words cut like a blade. I stood there, my calloused hands gripping the edge of the counter. A week. As if a week of labor under the Texas sun were nothing. As if my entire life of tending cattle, patching fences, and paying taxes meant less than the sand Gabriel and his wife were about to walk on at some beach resort. Their suitcases waited by the door, filled with clothes I had washed, ironed, and folded. The very same son who used to ride on my shoulders now carried himself like a stranger. They kissed the air near my cheek, a hollow gesture, and walked out into the blinding heat. I watched from the porch as their car kicked up a trail of dust down the road, the red taillights shrinking into the horizon. For a long minute, the farm was silent except for the creak of the windmill and the lowing of the cows. Then, from inside the house, the old kitchen phone rang. The sound sliced through the silence like a rifle crack. I picked it up. "This is Lawrence Jones." A professional voice answered. "Mr. Jones, this is Benjamin Scott from the First State Bank. I need to confirm some urgent transactions." My stomach dropped. "What kind of transactions?" "Your son, Mr. Gabriel Jones, attempted to transfer $150,000 this morning. There were also attempts to change the ownership status on several accounts. Since you are the primary account holder, we require your authorization." For a second I thought I had misheard him. $150,000. The money from the sale of cattle last month. Money meant for roof repairs, for medicine, for keeping the farm afloat. "I do not authorize anything," I said, my voice low and sharp. "Block all activity immediately, every account. Do it now." "Yes, sir," Benjamin replied. "We will freeze everything until we receive further instructions directly from you." I hung up, staring at the yellow kitchen walls that I had painted a decade earlier. They seemed to glow with judgment, silent witnesses to all the sacrifices I had made. Thousands of meals cooked in this room, thousands of bills paid, and now my own flesh and blood was trying to strip me of everything. That evening, as the sun bled across the horizon, I watered the rows of tomatoes and lettuce with hands that trembled from more than fatigue. The soil was damp beneath my boots, the air filled with the scent of jasmine I had planted when my wife was still alive. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Gabriel. His voice cracked with panic. "Dad, what happened with the accounts? We can't withdraw a cent, we can't pay for anything." Amber's furious. Patrick is yelling. "What did you do?" I let the silence hang. The sound of waves in the background told me exactly where they were. A hotel by the coast, a vacation paid for with my labor. "What did I do?" I said at last. "I protected what was mine." "Dad, it's an emergency!" he shouted. "We're stranded here." "An emergency?" I repeated, almost laughing. "Your beach vacation is an emergency. But my leaking roof is not. My medicine is not. This farm is not." "Dad, please." I cut the line. For the first time in years, my hand did not shake. I stood in the twilight, listening to the crickets, feeling the steady beat of my own heart. Betrayal has a sound, and it is silence after a son calls you not out of love but out of greed. That night, I sat on the porch, rocking slowly, the white roses in the garden glowing pale in the moonlight. And I whispered to the darkness, "This story is just beginning." The farm moved in its usual rhythm the next morning. Cows bawled for hay, hens scratched the dirt, and the windmill groaned in protest. My hands did the chores out of habit, but my head stayed fixed on that phone call from the bank. $150,000, a transfer without my say, my own son, treating me like a signature to be erased. Looking back, the warning signs had been there all along. Gabriel's visits were never about work anymore. He came with pamphlets from retirement homes where gray-haired men played cards under fluorescent lights. "Dad, you deserve ease," he'd say. Easy was never part of this land. Amber Susan carried her concern in polished folders. "Lawrence, paperwork is complicated at your age. Let us handle it." One day, she appeared with a thick green file, sticky notes marking where my name should go. She said it was just insurance updates. I remember the sharp click of her pen, eager and impatient. Behind her, Patrick stood silent, arms crossed, his presence more threat than comfort. I signed more than I should have, not enough to ruin me, but enough to haunt me. That morning, my neighbor Evelyn Martin came by with a pie. She has the kind of eyes that don't miss a thing. She sat at my kitchen table and folded her hands. "I was at Henderson's office yesterday renewing my deed. While I waited, I heard Amber Susan in the hall on the phone. I stopped breathing. She said they already had a buyer lined up for your farm, that all they needed was your signature on some renewal. And she said Patrick had arranged money for a care facility in the city for you." The words landed heavier than any hay bale I'd ever lifted. A care facility. Place me away like an old horse no longer fit for pasture. Evelyn's voice lowered. "Lawrence," she also mentioned switching the bank accounts into Gabriel's name. "Said it was more convenient for a man your age." The green folder sat on the counter. Evelyn opened it with care. Her finger traced clauses written in neat, poisonous language phrases about exigent circumstances and timely decisions. Each line was a small betrayal waiting to be sprung. "Lawrence," she whispered, "this could let them sell half this land without you even knowing." I stood by the window, looking out at the pecan trees my mother had planted. My chest ached, not from age but from the weight of my own trust. "I'm done being managed," I said. Evelyn drove me to town in her truck. At the bank, Benjamin Scott spread the papers across his desk, showing me every attempt Gabriel and Patrick had made. Loan applications, title inquiries, withdrawal requests. I signed orders freezing all accounts until further notice. From there, we went to see Arthur Thomas, a lawyer I trusted more than most kin. His office smelled of cedar and dust. He read through the documents Amber had pushed on me, circling one clause, underlining another. Then, he looked me square in the eye. "Mr. Jones, we can undo this. It will take steady hands, but it's possible." Together, we drafted revocations of every power I had carelessly granted. We set notices to the notary and the title office. We wrote a new will, this time leaving nothing to chance. My pen did not tremble. By the time Evelyn drove me home, dusk had painted the fields bronze. The farmhouse stood tall, no longer a burden on my shoulders but an ally at my back. For the first time in months, I felt steady. I watered the garden slowly, each stream a promise to myself. The air smelled of damp earth and jasmine. Overhead, the first stars appeared. Tomorrow there would be reckoning. Tonight there was clarity. And clarity, I realized, is the one gift betrayal can never take away. The morning after I reclaimed my accounts, I woke before dawn. The sky over Texas was still a deep navy, streaked faintly with silver. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and stared at the papers Arthur Thomas had prepared. Each page was a shield: revocations, restrictions, protections. For the first time in months, I felt like I had armor. Still, beneath that armor, something sharper moved: rage. Not the wild, reckless kind of rage that burns a man out, but a clean, steady fire. It had taken 74 years for me to realize just how much I had allowed others to decide for me. That ended now. Evelyn came by mid-morning, her hair pinned back, her hands full of notebooks. "We should go through everything you've signed the past year," she said without preamble. We spread folders across the dining table: bills, bank forms, so-called insurance renewals. Evelyn's eyes caught details mine would have skimmed past. She leaned close, reading aloud phrases meant to confuse: transferable authority, durable in perpetuity. Each was a dagger disguised in ink. She looked up at me. "Lawrence, these weren't mistakes. This was a plan." My jaw tightened. "Then, let's dismantle it." We drove back into town, this time in my old pickup. I wanted to face the bank on my own feet. Benjamin Scott, the bank manager, met us again. He looked tired, but his voice carried respect. "Mr. Jones, I've canceled every pending request. Your accounts are locked to anyone but you. We'll call if so much as a nickel tries to move without your say." "Good," I answered, "because my son and his in-laws aren't going to stop here." From there, we went to Arthur's office once more. The man had already begun drafting protections I hadn't known existed. He explained how power of attorney can be revoked, how coercion leaves fingerprints in the law. He advised me to write a new will, one that could not be twisted. I listened carefully. Each word landed like a stone in the foundation I was rebuilding. I signed a fresh will that day, my hand steady, my decision absolute. This farm, this land, this money would no longer be bait for greedy hands. Instead, it would go into a foundation support for aging farmers, help for families who worked the land with honesty. When I finished, Arthur leaned back. "You've done more today than most men manage in a year. You've taken your life back." Outside, the sun had climbed high, the heat pressing down like a heavy quilt, but inside me, something had lifted. That evening, I walked the fields alone. I traced the lines of the fences, the rows of cattle feeding, the pecan trees shading the pasture. Every acre carried the memory of my labor. The years of drought survived, the floods endured, the calves delivered in storms. This was not simply property. It was my life written on the land. I stopped by the rose bushes near the porch. White blooms opened stubbornly against the heat. I remembered when my wife planted them, insisting the farm needed beauty as much as utility. I touched one blossom, careful of the thorns. They protect themselves, I thought. Now it's my turn. The phone rang just after dark. Gabriel's voice came sharp, frantic. "Dad, what have you done? None of our cards work." "We can't pay the hotel bill. Amber is furious. Patrick says you've ruined everything." I stood in the kitchen, the light casting long shadows on the yellow walls. "What I've done," I said evenly, "is stop you from stealing from me." "You don't understand," Gabriel pleaded. "It's temporary. We just needed access. Access to $150,000 meant for roof repairs? Access to land worth millions?" My voice grew cold. "No, Gabriel, I understand perfectly." There was silence, then a muffled curse from Amber in the background. Patrick's voice came faint but sharp. "Tell him he's not thinking straight, push harder." Gabriel's words tumbled out. "Dad, we're family. We wouldn't hurt you. We just want what's best for you." I almost laughed. Family doesn't scheme behind your back. Family doesn't plan to sell your home and lock you away in a facility. Don't talk to me about what's best. I hung up. This time, my hands did not shake. Later, sitting on the porch with Evelyn, I told her about the call. She nodded slowly. "They won't stop. People like that never quit when they smell money." "Then they'll learn," I said, "that I'm not the old fool they think I am." Above us, the Texas stars shone bright, scattered across the sky like truths too clear to deny. For the first time in years, I did not feel tired. I felt ready. Dusk painted the Texas fields in gold and violet when the dust of Gabriel's truck curled up the driveway. I had been waiting all afternoon, rocking slowly in the chair my father built decades ago. The hose still ran in the garden, water pooling around tomato plants. My heart was steady, not racing. Tonight was theirs to explain and mine to end. The truck door slammed. Gabriel stepped out first, shoulders slumped, face pale. Behind him, Amber Susan followed, her hair frizzed from the trip, eyes sharp and restless. And last came Patrick, sunglasses still on, though the sun was nearly gone, jaw set like a man who believed he owned the earth he walked. They stood near the steps, shifting awkwardly, like actors in a poorly rehearsed play. None dared meet my eyes. Finally, Gabriel cleared his throat. "Dad, we need to talk." "Talk, then," I said without rising. He sat on the step, the same way he had when he was a boy, begging forgiveness for breaking windows with a baseball. But this was no child's mistake. "Why did you freeze the accounts? Why are you shutting us out?" His voice cracked. "You don't know?" I asked. Amber stepped forward, heels sinking into the soft soil. "Father-in-law, there's been a misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt you." I looked her straight in the eyes. "A misunderstanding? Planning to sell my farm behind my back is not a misunderstanding." Patrick finally spoke, his voice heavy with authority. "Lawrence, be reasonable. A man your age can't handle this property alone. It's dangerous for you to keep trying." I stood. My legs felt firm, rooted. "Dangerous? You know what's dangerous, Patrick? Trusting family who sharpen knives behind closed doors." Gabriel shifted, sweat beading his forehead. "Dad, it wasn't like that. We wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" I barked. "By telling people in town I'm losing my memory? By pushing papers under my nose and calling them insurance renewals? By lining up a buyer before you even had my answer?" Amber's face flushed crimson. She turned to Gabriel, whispering harshly, but I caught every word. He wasn't supposed to find out yet. Patrick raised his chin. "Even so, it's for your own good. We had arranged a care home, one of the best in the city. Gardens, medical staff, activities. A prison with flowers," I cut him off. "You planned to throw me out like a worn boot. This land has my blood and sweat in every acre, and you would trade it for beachfront cocktails." Gabriel rose, voice shaking. "Dad, stop twisting it. We're family." "Family," I repeated, almost laughing. "Family doesn't lie, family doesn't rob. Blood is nothing when the heart is rotten." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by cicadas in the trees. I reached into my pocket and pulled out folded documents. "Do you see these? Revocations, protections, a new will. Everything you thought you had is gone. I am no longer your victim. This farm will outlast me, but it won't be yours." Amber's eyes widened. "You can't do that." "I already did." Gabriel's lips trembled. "Dad, please, don't do this. We can fix it." I stepped closer until we were face to face. He still towered over me, but for the first time in his life he looked small. "There was a way to fix it, Gabriel. It was called not betraying me." Amber's hand clutched his arm. "Let's leave. He's lost his mind." Patrick adjusted his sunglasses and sneered. "This isn't over. You can't just cut us out. The law will side with us." I smiled coldly. "Then the law will teach you the same lesson I just did. A man who works his land, who signs his own papers, who protects his own rights cannot be erased." The sun slipped below the horizon. Stars pricked the darkening sky. I pointed toward the road. "Go. This is no longer your home." They hesitated, stunned by the finality in my tone. Then Patrick turned on his heel, muttering. Amber followed, tears streaking her face, though they looked more of frustration than remorse. Gabriel lingered, eyes glistening. "Dad, is there really no way back?" "There was," I said softly. "You buried it the day you chose greed over loyalty." He nodded once, shoulders sagging, and climbed into the truck. Dust rose again as they drove away, leaving me on the porch, the farm spread behind me like a fortress. For the first time in years, silence felt like peace. The next morning, I woke to the sound of cattle lowing for feed. Their voices filled the dawn air like old friends reminding me of my duty. I carried the pail, scattered grain, and moved through the chores as though nothing had changed, yet everything had. The porch where my son had begged and failed, the road where dust had swallowed his taillights, these were no longer symbols of loss but of liberation. By noon, Evelyn arrived with her usual knock and a basket of cornbread. She studied my face, then asked, "How did it go?" "They're gone," I said simply. Her brow furrowed. "Gone for good?" They left with rage, shame, and empty hands. That's as good as gone. Evelyn sat across from me at the kitchen table. "Lawrence, you should know, word's spreading in town. Patrick has been telling folks you're unfit to run the farm. He's hinting that Gabriel will take over soon." I clenched my jaw. "Let him talk. I've already signed protections. But gossip is a weed, it grows fast." Evelyn leaned in. "Then show them you're not weak. Let them see you're still the man who built this place from nothing." Her words stuck. That afternoon, I called Arthur Thomas. He met me at his office with a firm handshake. "Lawrence, I expected you. I want everything locked tighter. Revocations aren't enough. I need legal locks no one can break." Arthur nodded. "We'll file notices with the county clerk. Any deed transfer, any lien attempt, will require your physical presence. No exceptions. And I'll notify the bank again. Every transaction must pass through you directly." I signed where he pointed. Each signature felt like another stone in the wall between me and betrayal. On the way home, Evelyn suggested we stop at the feed store. As I bought seed and fertilizer, familiar faces from town eyed me curiously. I lifted my head, met their stares, and nodded. No explanations, no apologies. Let them see strength, not weakness. That evening, I ate alone at the kitchen table, scrambled eggs, tomatoes from the garden, Evelyn's cornbread. I chewed slowly, tasting freedom. The silence of the house was not emptiness, it was mine. Just as I washed the dishes, the phone rang. Amber's voice spilled out, sharp and desperate. "Father-in-law, we need to talk. You can't just cut us off like this." I dried my hands and held the receiver steady. "Amber, I told you before your plans end here." "You don't understand," she said. "Without that money, we're stranded. Gabriel can't even pay for gas. Patrick says you've lost your mind. Please, think of the family." "Family?" I asked. "Family is loyalty. Family is respect. You stopped being family the moment you plotted to sell my land." Her silence was long. Then she whispered, "You'll regret this." "No," I answered. "For the first time in years, I won't." I hung up. The next day, I repaired the fence by the north pasture, my hands blistering, my back aching. Yet the pain felt clean. Every nail hammered was proof I was still master here. Evelyn brought lemonade and watched quietly. "You're rebuilding more than fences," she said. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. No visions of legal papers, no whispers of betrayal, only dreams of green fields stretching wide beneath an honest sky. But peace never lasts. On the third morning, a letter arrived from a lawyer in Houston Patrick's doing. It threatened legal action, claiming Gabriel had rights to act in my stead. I brought it straight to Arthur. He read it, then laughed dryly. "Bluff. These papers you revoked are ironclad. They'll find no court willing to side with them." Relief washed over me, but beneath it pulsed something fiercer: determination. My enemies weren't gone, they were regrouping, and I would be ready. That evening, Evelyn joined me on the porch. We shared coffee as the horizon burned orange. She asked, "Do you regret not forgiving them?" I shook my head. "Forgiveness without change is surrender. I've surrendered enough of my life already." She smiled softly. "Then you're finally free." As night fell, I felt the truth settle deep. Freedom wasn't the absence of family, it was the presence of dignity. And that, I swore, I would never give up again. The weeks that followed were a blur of sawdust, sweat, and sunrise. For the first time in years, I woke each morning with purpose. The land wasn't just surviving, it was waiting for me to breathe life back into it. I started with the old barn. Its roof sagged like tired shoulders, shingles scattered by storms. With hammer and ladder, I patched one panel at a time. My arms ached, my knees complained, but I pushed through. Each nail I drove was a promise. This farm would not crumble under neglect or betrayal. Evelyn arrived most mornings, carrying notebooks and steady energy. She helped me sort through years of receipts and contracts, creating neat stacks where chaos once lived. "You've run this place in your head for decades," she told me. "Now we'll run it on paper too." Together we formed a plan, not just to repair, but to grow. We would expand the chicken coop, add goats, maybe even start selling preserves at the Saturday market. Evelyn's handwriting filled page after page, each line another step toward independence. At the bank, Benjamin Scott approved my request for new business accounts, this time with no secondary names attached. He shook my hand firmly. "Mr. Jones, I've seen too many families tear themselves apart over money. You're doing the right thing." I left the bank with a checkbook that felt like a new weapon in my arsenal, not for spending carelessly, but for building wisely. One afternoon, Evelyn brought a young woman named Kelly Thomas. She had studied marketing at the community college and wanted to help. Her eyes shone with determination. "Mr. Jones, people love stories. If we tell yours 74 years of farming, rebuilding after betrayal, you'll have customers lining up." I hesitated. "I'm no salesman." Kelly grinned. "That's where I come in. You do the work. I'll make sure people know about it." So we struck a bargain. Kelly would set up flyers, social media, and a stall at the town market. I would focus on producing quality goods, eggs, vegetables, preserves. Evelyn swore by. The first Saturday we tried, I stood behind a modest table under a white tent. Mason jars of jam gleamed ruby and gold. Baskets of eggs sat beside loaves of Evelyn's bread. At first, only a few curious folks wandered over. But then Kelly, with her cheerful pitch, told them the story of a farmer reclaiming his land. By noon, we had sold out. That night, as I counted bills at the kitchen table, I felt lighter. Money honestly earned carried a sweetness stolen dollars never could. Of course, rebuilding wasn't only financial, it was personal. I walked the fields each evening, tracing fences, touching pecan trees, listening to the rhythm of cattle feeding. I whispered to the land like an old friend, "We're still here. We're not done yet." One evening, Evelyn joined me at the rose bushes by the porch. "You've changed," she said quietly. "How so?" "You walk taller. You laugh again. You're not carrying their shadows anymore." I looked at the roses, white petals opening against dusk. Maybe it's because I finally chose myself. After all these years, I remembered the farm wasn't just theirs to covet, it was mine to defend. The next day, the contractor, Mr. Peterson, arrived to inspect the farmhouse. "This place has good bones," he said, running a hand along the porch railing. "With 3 months of steady work, it'll look like new." I nodded. "Then let's start tomorrow." By sundown, the farm buzzed with life again, chickens clucking in a reinforced coop, goats bleating from a newly built pen, Evelyn humming as she labeled jars, Kelly sketching ideas for our next stall. As I sat on the porch watching the last light fade, I realized something. Rebuilding wasn't just about wood and nails, money and markets. It was about reclaiming dignity, planting roots deeper than betrayal, and proving that 74 years of labor had not been wasted. This land was alive again, and so was I. 6 months had passed since the confrontation on the porch. The farm no longer felt like a battlefield, it was alive again. The barn had a new roof. The chicken coop bustled with feathers and noise, and rows of tomatoes ripened under the sundae. At the Saturday market, Evelyn and I sold jars of jam and fresh eggs under a sign Kelly painted, "Jones Family Farm." For the first time in years, I felt proud to put our name in front of people. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was sanding boards in the workshop, that I heard the sound of tires on gravel. My heart stiffened. Through the window, I saw Gabriel step out of an old truck that looked as worn as he did. His shoulders slumped, his clothes dusty, his beard untrimmed. He walked slowly, not with the confidence of a man claiming inheritance, but with the caution of one asking for entry. I set down the sander and stepped outside. We stood a few feet apart, silence heavy as the summer air. "Dad," he said finally, voice low, "can we talk?" I didn't answer. I wanted to see how far he would go. He cleared his throat. I wanted to say I'm sorry. "I know words don't fix anything, but I need you to hear it." His eyes were wet, not with the crocodile tears Amber used to spill, but with something heavier. Regret. "What happened to Amber?" I asked. He looked away. "She left. 3 months ago. Took what money she could and moved to Houston. Patrick hasn't called me since. I think he blames me for everything." I folded my arms. "And do you blame yourself?" "Yes," Gabriel whispered. "Every day. I let them use me. I let them turn me against you. I was weak, greedy, and blind." The words hung in the air. For years I had dreamed of hearing them, yet now that I didn't know whether to believe. Evelyn came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked at Gabriel with the sharp, measuring eyes of someone who had seen too many men make promises they couldn't keep. "You here to take, or you here to give?" she asked bluntly. "To give," Gabriel said. "If you'll let me. I've been working construction in town. Hard work, honest pay. My boss, Mrs. Davis, she could tell you I'm not the same man I was. I studied his face. The arrogance was gone, the excuses too. He looked older, worn by labor, stripped of entitlement. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Not money, not land. I just want a chance to prove I can be different. If you need help fixing fences, hauling feed, building pens, I'll do it. No pay, just work." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Talk is cheap. Work isn't." Gabriel nodded. "I know." I took a long breath. The farm stretched around us, fields I had fought to protect, walls I had rebuilt plank by plank. "You can help," I said slowly. "But not as my son. Not yet. As a worker. As a guest. You'll earn your place with sweat, not words." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you, Dad, thank you." "Don't call me Dad," I cut in. "Call me Lawrence. You have to earn the right to call me father again." He swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, sir, Lawrence." That Sunday, he arrived at 8 sharp, dressed in old boots and work gloves. He didn't talk much. He mended fence boards, carried feed, repaired the goat pen with steady hands. I watched from the kitchen window as Evelyn set a plate of cornbread on the porch. When Gabriel finished, he sat on the ground, sweat dripping, and ate without complaint. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of pride, not for what he was, but for what he might become if he kept walking this path. That night, as the cicadas sang and the stars returned to their watch, I whispered to the land, "Maybe some things can grow back after all." A year passed, and the farm wore its revival like a badge of honor. The barn stood strong with its new roof, the pens were full of life, and the Saturday market knew us by name. Folks no longer whispered about whether Lawrence Jones had lost his grip. They came to buy his jam, his eggs, his vegetables, and to shake his hand. Evelyn had moved into the guest room by then, no longer just a neighbor but a partner in both work and life. Kelly's marketing ideas had blossomed into a real brand. Jones Family Farm had customers in town, in the city, and even orders trickling in from across the state. But the biggest change was Gabriel. He came every Sunday now, always on time, always in work boots. He never asked for a dime. He mended fences, painted barns, hauled feed, and listened more than he spoke. Over months, his silence turned into something steady trust rebuilt with sweat instead of excuses. One evening, as the sun sank behind the pecan trees, he sat with me on the porch. His hands were blistered, his face lined, but his voice carried no arrogance. "Lawrence," he said quietly, "thank you for letting me back onto this land." I looked at him a long time. "You've earned more than a chance, son. You've earned respect." He blinked hard, swallowing emotion. I hadn't called him son in over a year. "Do you mean it?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "But remember, respect is like this land. You keep it alive only by tending it every day." He nodded, eyes glistening. Weeks later, Evelyn and I gathered with Arthur Thomas at his office. I signed documents formalizing a foundation in my name, one that would protect the farm and provide resources to struggling farmers and women in need. "This land won't just survive me," I told Arthur. "It'll outlive greed." When word spread, Patrick tried once more to stir trouble, sending a lawyer from Houston with papers claiming family rights. Arthur brushed them aside with a smile. "You're wasting your client's money. Mr. Jones has ironclad protections." Patrick never showed his face again. The real turning point came when Gabriel showed up one evening with an envelope. He laid it on the table. Inside was a cashier's check for $150,000. "What's this?" I asked. His voice was steady. "It's the money I once tried to steal. I've saved every dollar I could from construction jobs. I'll never erase the past, but I can put it right." I stared at the check, my throat tight. "Gabriel, you don't owe me this." "Yes, I do," he said firmly. "I need to close that circle." I stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. For the first time in years, I pulled him into an embrace. "Then you're truly my son again." The following months were filled with new beginnings. Gabriel became my partner not by blood alone, but by choice and work. Evelyn managed the books, Kelly expanded our market, and I focused on the soil, the animals, the rhythm of a life I thought had been stolen. One autumn evening, as golden light spilled across the fields, I sat on the porch with Evelyn. Laughter drifted from the kitchen where Gabriel and Kelly packed jars for delivery. The farm was alive with voices again, not manipulative whispers, but the sound of honest labor and shared purpose. Evelyn handed me a cup of coffee. "Do you ever regret not giving up?" I shook my head. If I'd surrendered, I would have lost more than the land. I would have lost myself. She smiled. "And instead, you found a legacy." I looked out at the rows of pecan trees, at the cattle grazing peacefully, at my son working with steady hands. "Yes," I said, "a legacy built not on inheritance but on respect, and that's something no one can take away." The cicadas hummed, the stars blinked alive, and I leaned back in my rocking chair, content. For the first time in 74 years, I wasn't just surviving, I was truly living.